Alrighty then, give me just a couple moments here to get everything all set up. Oh, and pop out the chat. And then we switch over to camera. Hey guys, what's up? Okay, so first of all, for those of you who are watching after the fact on YouTube, recorded, do you mind? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, and Anycubic Photon right here does amazing work. Now, pardon me, I have a little annoying little furball. Yes, you. To get off the back of my chair. Get on, fuzzbutt. Good boy. Okay, anyway, like I was saying, tonight's show was actually inspired by a question someone asked a while back in one of the Discords, and that was, what figure do I think is the best to paint for practice? And I started thinking, it had to be a figure that had several different textures on it, but was still relatively easy to paint because the pose it was in didn't block anything off. So for example, if it was like this, it's a bit more difficult to get that brush in there between the chest and this arm, you know. Whereas, something that's more, standing out like this, everything is easy to get to, everything is easy to see, it's easier to paint. But you want something that's going to have metal, like plate metal, like armor, like a breastplate. Something with chainmail or fur. Techniques are similar, just what paints you use is different. Cloth, wood, leather, and hair, and then maybe a gem. That way you've got all those different textures to practice the different techniques on. Print out a whole bunch of them and just practice like all of the metal, and then all of the cloth, and then all of the chainmail, and then all of the hair, the whole 9 yards. And something with an nice broad open face, so you can paint the entirety of the face. So, I decided I was going to make it. He's going to be just a heroic miniature, but I'm going to use all sorts of different techniques that I picked up over the years to paint it. Or not paint, to sculpt it. I'm going to combine as many different textures as possible into the figure. So let me remind people that I'm live. And what I can do is I can discuss some of the figures that I learned to paint on, which really don't exist anymore. Most of the earliest figures I painted were by a company named Rapham and a company named Raupartha. Now, at the time, Raupartha had a subline called Raupartha Imports. And what Raupartha Imports were, they were actually figures from Citadel over in Great Britain before Citadel released Warhammer Fantasy Battle 3rd Edition, which was really the first one to come over here, and well before Warhammer 40k. So these were actually old school models that had the bases as part of the figure before they started doing their little slaughter base thing. And they were originally aimed at D&D because they didn't have their own game to play. They included things like a Jabberwock. Yes, they made a Jabberwock figure. They had, a giant spider and a giant scorpion, which used the same leg section, just a different body section. The giant scorpion had the additional bit for the and then there was Grenadier. And I tended to stick with Grenadier and Ralpartha, but Grenadier more than any, because Grenadier had the fun sets. I mean, you had the Dragon Lords and the Giant Lords, which were, well, effectively a dragon and one or two other little bits to go with it. Like, the Shire Dragon included two little halfling peasants. There was one dragon that included a small pile of gold and treasure. There was another one that included its eggs, and so on and so forth. And this culminated in what was probably the largest metal dragon ever made. I cannot for the life of me remember the name, but it was it was intended to be a black dragon. And back in the day, this was about the size of your typical dragon figure, plus wings. Because your typical human figure was not this size. No. Your typical human figure was about the size of my goblins. So you'd have this as your dragons, and they were really big. Well, this one dragon they made was so huge and so heavy that most people I knew who got it never successfully managed to assemble the daggone thing, let alone gap fill and paint. Because if you just use super glue or epoxy on this metal piece, especially if you forgot to clean it, it just broke under its own weight. And hello, Carlton. Ugh. But what you ended up having to do was, there's a technique called pinning. You take a small pin vise and a little drill bit, and you drill a little hole in the piece. You then take a little bit of paint around the ring of the hole, test fit the piece, and it'll leave behind that paint where the pin is going to go. And then you drill in the pin on the hole on that side. You take a small section about like yay big of paper clip, stick it in one hole, super glue or epoxy, stick it in the other hole, super glue or epoxy. And of course, don't use accelerant. Accelerant actually makes the bond weaker, even though it makes it go faster. I'm going to try. Now, let me put him down. I was discussing the miniatures I learned to paint on. Oh no. Oh no, that would be bad. You want to learn on what you'll be painting. Because if you develop bad habits on a large size head, and you try to do it on the small scale, there's no way. But I learned on 25mm scale, the original 25, where it wasn't 25 to the eye, which was what led to the 28mm scale. Instead, it was 25 to the top of the head. And these are small guys. As many different textures on a single mini. Mini will have flat metal breastplate. It'll have chainmail. It'll have hair, skin, cloth, leather, and probably a gem on the center of the belt. And it'll be in an open pose, so that'll be easy to get in there. No nooks and crannies that'll be hidden away or anything like that. But anyway, a lot of the figures back then were small. In fact, the figures of today, one of my orcs, this could be used as an ogre back in 84, 85. It's that big. It'd be considered size large. Whereas nowadays, like I showed earlier, it's actually about the same height, although a good bit chunkier, as a typical elf or human figure. So keeping that in mind, I am not going to make an out-of-scale figure. I'm not going to make a teeny tiny figure. I'm going to make a figure within the scale that of most of the figures I print, which also is in the scale currently of most Warhammer figures, with as many different textures as possible while still making it a single cohesive look. Okay, so the first thing that we got to do then is we've got to pop over here. Now, we're going to leave it human. We don't want to mess around with ears or anything. We're going to add on the tunic skirt. No, we're going to add on the robe skirt. I'll show you why when we get to the actual figure. I'm going to hide it for now. And now as for props, we're going to go ahead and give it a heater shield on the left hand. And we're going to kind of pivot that just a little bit, because you want it kind of almost up against the wrist. Okay. Then we want to give it another prop. We're going to give it a longsword, a very simple, basic longsword. Actually, let's make it a Celtic arm. Yeah, let's make it an arming sword, right-hand arming sword. Now we want to make sure that this will print well on FDM. So while that is ideal for, if I was going to make it just for me, we need to make it work for FDM. So we're going to make it a little bit wider. That'll make it easier for an FDM printer to print it. But as you can see, it's just basically blade, crossguard, and pommel. Might put a little bit of deco on the pommel when we get there, but for now, that's all there is. So we're going to now hide our arming sword and shield. And we're going to look for a pose I have that we can build from. Actually, no, I know what we'll do. Let's go ahead and just give it a contrapposto torso, but we need to now, whoop, I forgot to make the side to side locked and the side to side here locked. So here we're gonna alright. I'm gonna go ahead and go to front view. Okay, we're gonna bend this side to side that way. Control D to drop. Now we're gonna pin it. Pin translation, pin rotation. And we're gonna do the same to this one. Pin translation, pin rotation. Now we're gonna take that. We're gonna side to side it a good bit more. Okay, now we've got a perspective view. We're actually going to bend it backwards. Bring it forward. Let's bring this over a bit more. And this over. Go to front view. Oh, heck. No fuzz. Alright. Now let's go to the left view, because we need to see how this is going. Okay, we're going to bring this back a little. Okay, perspective. Now we're going to bend this forward a little bit. And this forward a good bit more. Because we want it to kind of have a dynamic pose even though it's going to be intended for painting. Okay, now shoulder's going to come up. Actually, let's do one last thing. Unpin all. Control D to drop to the ground. There we go. Now this shoulder, we're going to bend it up a bit. We're going to twist it forward a bit. Now we're going to bend the arm up and twist that way. Go side to side. Mm-hmm. And then take this and let's lock side to side. We're going to go to the right view. Okay. Alright. I'm going to lock the chest. Pin rotation, pin translation. Grab the hand. Just going to kind of bring it. Whoa. Go to perspective. Okay, first things first, let's bring it over. Oh, Nikes. Let's bend it more just so that we can. Okay, now we're going to turn over here. And we're going to. Alright, now let's undo some of that side to side and a bit more bend. Twist. Actually, let's go ahead and unbend that. That's a bit too much bending. Now we're going to drop this shoulder a little and go back. We're going to bend the forearm, and with the shield visible, we're going to twist the shoulder to the side. And we're also going to scale down the shield a bit just to make it a little bit more, yeah, just a little bit. Actually, we need to make it a little bit thicker just to make sure it'll print well. Okay. And here we have the pose for our basic sculpt figure. And we're gonna have that on there, but we're gonna hide it for right now. And now we're gonna import the base that we're gonna use. It's under Free Sculpt Minis, bases. Let's go ahead and make it the planks. That way we definitely have some wood for them to work on. Yet another technique. Front view. Let's bring it to there. Right view. We're going to bring it forward. Okay, and then perspective. Okay. That is what he's basically going to start off looking like before we get everything all sculpted and said and done. So we're going to hide our base, shield, and sword. File. Export. Going to Broadcast Miniatures, New, Painting Practice, Body. Hide him. File. Export. Sword. Hide it. Shield. Hide it. And make the robe visible. File. Export. Robe. And there we go. File. Export. Base. And then pop over to ZBrush. Yay! Who's all in? Hey, Mark! Whoop. Documents, new. No, I don't want to save changes. Alright, import. We're going to start off with the body. Well, we gotta, first of all, close that. D. Storage. 3D printing. No, I'm not 3D printing. 03109. 3D printing home, meshes, pre-sculpt minis, broadcast minis, new, painting practice, body. Okay, before we get to anything else, ow, I'm gonna hurt myself. No, I'm going to get my tablet. Bring it around. Well, bring it around here. Had to change which one it was in. And real quick, I'm going to have to mute for a second. Sorry about that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make sure we get a couple things cleared out on this figure, like the shoulders. Alright, now we're not going to mess with that shoulder yet. We're going to mess with this one. What we're going to do is we're going to come up here, hold down shift for the smooth brush, drop it down to about there, and smooth that over just a bit. We're going to mess with this after we've done the... Alright, now, subtool. We're going to append polymesh, and I wish they had mouse wheel active. Import robe next. Then we're going to append polymesh, import shield, append polymesh, import sword, and then append polymesh, import base. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to hide everything except the robe and the body. And on the robe, we're going to subdivide it a few times till it's around, yeah, that should do. The body, we're also going to go ahead and subdivide it a few times. Then, hiding the body, we're going to come up here. We actually want it, let's turn on transparency, because we want what we're about to do to be at about knee level. We're going to tilt it ever so slightly. And then we're going down to trim rectangle. Now when I can hold Control Shift when I'm not on the figure and I drag and drop, it trimmed it. We're gonna bring it up a little bit higher. No, I need to tilt it. I forgot. Okay. Get on over. Good girl. Okay. Now, that is not going to be a robe. That's going to be a hauberk and long tunic underneath. Okay. So what we're going to do next is we're going to come in and we're going to make sure that we move the bottom edge, or the top edge rather, of this tunic into the torso. So we're going to grab here and move it in, grab here and move it in, because what this will do, we're now going to increase the intensity. We're going to smooth out down here a bit. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to Dynamesh these together. Merge down. Okay. Geometry. Dynamesh of 768. Okay, we're going to undo, because what we got to do now involves smoothing this border. And then we're going to 1, 2, 3. Now we've done the Dynamesh, we're going to go ahead and deal with this. We're also going to come back in, and with standard turned subtract, reduced a lot and the stroke so that we can turn lazy mouse off. I'm going to come in, and bring it there, because that's where, because there's no bulge there. Okay. Then with add, we're going to kind of bring it in, increase here, because that's where you're. We're going to smooth it out because this will be covered in armor/cloth. Frame out. Now what we've got to do, we're going to give it another layer of subdivision. Delete. and we're going to mark off where the hauberk is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this a bit smaller. Oh, I forgot to turn on that. No, that. And then we're going to focal shift to 0. Wait, no. That goes back to 55. It's the control that we got to do focal shift to 0. And what we're going to start off with is we're going to make a sleeve. Then coming here, yes, I'm keeping that mark down there because what we're doing is we're going to make this actual export. Bring that across, bring this down and across, and then we're going to come back from here, come around, and we've got to kind of come up this way. And then finally, we're actually going to give it a partial hauberk. This gives us plenty of, actually, we're going to go a little bit higher. We're going to make it more of a Birney size. The reason for this is this will let us end up using everything on the robes section, quote unquote, below this as cloth. No, that's not good. Alright, what we need is we're going to cross. Okay. And we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna end up making this into a more of a Birney than a hauberk, but alright, then we're gonna just start filling in everywhere. Okay. Okay, now what you can see here is what's gray will be chainmail. Well, barring the waist piece and any trim that we give it. But we're now going to go ahead, we're going down to extract 0.02, extract. Okay, that's alright, that's too much. We need 0.005, extract, accept, and then we draw here, select the body, draw there, and this we're going to export as Birney. And it occurs to me that I'm going to have to start up a program I forgot to start up, and it takes a few moments to really kick in. Nowhere near as slow as it did back when I was using the 8-year-old computer, but it takes a few. And because of that, you know, hey. Ugh. And while we're waiting, I'm going to grab a couple. The program I had to start up, by the way, is 3D Studio Max. Because I'm going to take the geometry of that hauberk, import, meshes, resculpt minis, broadcast minis, new, painting practice, Birney, import, and oh boy, it's over 200,000 faces, over 2 million faces.
This means it'll take a long time. That may have been a mistake.
Actually, it might be 1.2 million faces, not 2. No, it's about 2.4. It's counting triangles. Yay. Wah, 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 wah. Even so, I do have a much more powerful computer than I had before. Okay, and 2.468. Yep. Once it loads completely, I right click down here, rendering level, we're going to make them all wireframe, turn off shaded selected faces, all viewpoints, and then we're going to turn this one back to smooth highlights. Now, we're going to select what you'll find is that there is now ring, select, delete. Okay. We're going to come down to here. The reason what I'm doing is okay. No. Gotta do it this way. Gotta select my edges so I can do the ring. Ring. Convert to that and delete. Oh, 2 Nikes. Delete. Okay. Now we're going to do it down here. We're slowly making headway. Basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce it down to its finest component. Okay, and then we ring. It selects all parallel edges. Then I hit Control Polygon and it turns them all into selected polygons. Delete them all. And now the only thing left connecting the inside and the outside of the tunic is this sleeve down here. And the trick is trying to figure out how to make it which edge. Okay, I see which edges it is. Select here, Oh, I've still got it on select polygon. Select that one. Ring. There. Delete. Then we select by connected surfaces. We select the inside of the tunic and not the out. Delete. Now we're going to export this. Because what we need to do is we need to take it back into ZBrush. No, not base geometry. Broadcast miniatures, new. Painting practice, Birney. Yes, I want to replace it. Export. Oh wait, there's one last thing I gotta do. Select all. Because each one of these edges had a little bit of a bevel on them. A very small one. Do they? No, they don't. Okay. So we're going to take that. We're going to delete it. Go back into ZBrush. And where this is, we're going to import the revised Birney. No. Go away. Go away, Fuzzbutt. No. Okay, so next thing we're going to do, we're going to go to Z plugin, decimation master. We're going to decimate it to 35,000 polygons. No, it's not decimation. That's not what we wanted. That's right. It was. See, there's three ways to reduce polygon count in ZBrush. Decimation is one of them. Second is Dynamesh, but what we want is Z-remesher. Because that way we'll have nice, even, straight edge loops to cut when we map this. And we are mapping it so that we can turn it into chainmail easily without having to sit there and draw each individual link. Okay, that should be good enough to cut. Now, we're going to export that as the Birney. Yes, it already exists. I still want to do it. And then we're going to UV layout. You can do the next bit in whatever your particular program of choice is. I'm just using UV layout because it's my favorite for doing UV mapping. Okay, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to cut the sleeves off. And trim on the inside. Split, drop. The reason we're doing this is because chainmail in the real world has a direction to it. And we want to make sure that the direction on the Birney and its sleeves is a different direction. And then we're going to cut it here and here. Drop, drop. You can see where the seams are now with the green lines. We go back to a UV vision. Hit D. No, not D. Hit F for flatten. Drag across. Then we drag across to select them all. Optimize. Let's make it optimize for 10 minutes. It won't run for the full 10 minutes. It'll run until it thinks it's done. And you'll see that while most of them came out pretty good, not all of them did. For example, this that vertex. Then I'm going to move that vertex to there, kind of even it out and make it a bit more. Okay, now this needs to be reflattened. There we go. Now, we want to put it so that the bottom of the sleeves are facing down and the bottom of the hauberks are facing down, the front and back. Then we go over here to pack, best quality, a little bit of space between them, pack all. And the end result is, alright, so we go to Edit, Auto Fit, Off, Save, Dismiss. And we're going to exit this. And then re-import the Bernie. This is a Bernie version that actually has UV mapping. Now we're going to duplicate it. I'll explain why in just a little bit. And we're going to down to geometry, and we're going to subdivide it until it's got quite a few. We're then going to go to modify topology and cap holes. Okay, now we go to surface, noise, UV, alpha, and from the alpha we're going to choose the chainmail alpha. Mix basic noise to 0, strength maximum, alpha scale, let's say 0.3. That's a bit large. Let's make that 0.25. There we go. That should be good enough. Okay. We're going to click OK. We're then going to click Mask by Noise. We go down to Masking and invert it. And under Deformation, we're going to inflate until we get a decent looking thickness for that male. The thicker the male, the easier it will be to paint. Okay, so there is our chain. Now we need to make our trim, and that's why we kept the previous there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to subdivide it. We're going to shrink the mouse just a little, zoom in, and we're going to sit here and basically trace out the edges. We're also going to turn on, under brush, we go to auto masking, control held down, we turn on backface mask. And we're going to trace with the mouse as close to the edge of the seam as possible. And within a couple millimeters. And bring this around and do the same thing. And then here. Okay. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to finish around this sleeve. Oh, zoom in. Okay. That's that sleeve. Now this sleeve. By doing it so that the mouse is really close to the edge, we're going to end up with a relatively equal amount of trim on each seam. Okay, and now the neck. And okay, that's our trim. Now just to make sure we're going far enough, we're going to take out that subtool. We're going to make the male visible, but we're still working with the Barney. Now we're going to extract that at 0.03 and see what happens. Okay, that's a little too thick, so 0.02. That's good. Accept, draw, draw. Okay, so we have chainmail with trim. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to add on a waist plate. The waist plate is going to be our metal armor. Although you could paint it as you could theoretically paint it as leather, but it's intended to be metal. Okay, then there we go. And we're going to do the same thing coming down. Yes, this is a piece of armor that if it was actually worn by a human being, he would impale himself trying to sit down. But it's a fantasy style that has become kind of common thanks to Warhammer, so we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. Okay, and then we're just going to drag it around the center back. And once again, we're going to turn on the male to make sure that what we're about to do will be visible. We extract it at 0.2. Accept. Perfect. We don't even need to pull any of it out. That's our waist plate. And we can actually now hide that for good. Now, another way to get some plate in here for the painting is to add in some bracers. Again, it's theoretically possible that our good people will paint it as leather, but it's at least an excuse. So, okay, that wasn't good because that was the wrong angle. Okay, we need to tilt it like that. No, wrong way. Tilt it towards. And then we're going to start from here. And there we go. That's going to be a bracer. We're going to do the same thing over here. But we're going to do it after we hide all this. And we're going to kind of tilt it a little bit. Okay, and then there. Oh, let's reduce some of that. Oh, there we go. And we can see that we went too far. So what we need to do now is just bring it angled. And there. And we're going to extract that at 0.02. Extract, accept, draw, and then just to show once again, he's got bracers. Now we're going to go ahead and add the gem onto the center of the waste plate. We're going to do it the easy way. We go to our insert gemstone and we make sure that under depth, okay, it's at 0. We're going to put it in the center of this, pretty big, so it's easy to. Okay, let's change that depth to embed to 10. Okay, and then we're going to split unmasked parts, and this sucker is going to get a little bit of subdivision. Alright, now zooming back out. As you can see, about the only thing left we need to do is hair. We also need to kind of trim up where the mouth is. Also, for the sake of making it a little easier to paint, we're going to raise the eyebrow a bit and make the eyes a little bit bigger. Hey Josh, I'm sorry it took so long. Again, I don't have someone who can watch the chat for me, but I'm working on the ideal figure to practice painting on. Something with as many different basic textures as possible. Which reminds me, we need to go ahead and add a pouch to his back. And we're going to add it on the waist plate. So, nope, that's not good. I'm going to bring it down here. Let's put it here. Okay, now we split unmasked parts, grab it, subdivide it a few times to be nice and smooth, and we go to move. Not move topological, move, because this is made up of multiple pieces. Make it a little bit bigger. We're going to grab here and pull it down into the male. Grab the back. We're going to pull this back into the male and the belt. We want to kind of fuse it in. And that includes down here. But yeah, what we have currently, after we've added wrinkles here, we have cloth, we have plate metal and or leather, we have gemstone, we've got mail, again plate metal, we got some detailing on that to do, skin. We need to add hair. and then start to detail him. For wood, we have the inside of the shield, which is currently hidden, and the wooden plank base. Sorry. Okay, so let's go ahead. Under subtool, let's go back to our buddy. I'm going to select just the head, just so we can zoom in. And then we're going to go back to standard, just so we have a smaller brush to work with. And grabbing, we're going to draw in our hairline, which is actually going to be kind of long, because we want a lot of hair. Okay. And then we're going to just kind of trim that up like that, because that's all we need on the side. Everything else is going to be in the back. And then we're going to just start fill this in. We got plenty of time to tweak it and add in wrinkles and things like that, and possibly even tweak the head to make it a bit more painting friendly. Remember, this is for painting practice, not painting perfection. So I made the chainmail a little bit more detailed than I normally would have. And now this, we're going to make the hair pretty long. Okay, now we're going to extract it at 0.02, except draw on our buddy so he no longer has that masking. And then we're going to Dynamesh at 128. Now, we're going to smooth it a bit. Okay, zoom that in, zoom in the front, or smooth in the front, and smooth that in. Now, we're going to go to clay buildup, and we're going to make sure that auto masking backface mask is turned on. We're then going to change the alpha to the round alpha, to the alpha 6 or 12. Alpha 6. And we're going to start subdividing it until it looks nice and smooth. Okay, now we're going to just kind of pull it out a bit down here, so that we can eventually start dragging it down below the level of the hauberk. And then we're going to Dynamesh it again. I'm going to subdivide it again, and kind of start pulling out down below again. This is all just to build up some volume and drag it down, make it really long so that there's plenty to paint on. And then we're going to Dynamesh again, subdivide again, and now we're going to grab the move tool, make it really big, grab the bottom and move it down even more. Well, let's shrink this because it's too big. There. Shrink that. And smooth this. Dynamesh. No. Okay. And now we're going to subdivide it one last time. And we're going to break open the clay buildup tool. And we're going to shrink it down quite a bit, because this is going to be our locks. Okay, so it's going to be from here. We're going to start it off pulling it back like this. And we're going to kind of pull it down. We're going to make it relatively straight. We're not going to try and get any kind of fancy hairstyles here. This is just to kind of get the vision of where we want to put these locks. Okay. Now the next thing is we're going to go to the slash tool. It's on subtract, but we're going to drop it down to 14 or 15 and turn off lazy mouse. Now we're going to start from here. We're going to bring it in and turn this into slashes. Okay, now we're going to make the mouse a little bit bigger, and you start coming down between these locks. Okay. We're kind of bring that in. Move that down and come in like this. And this gives us a little bit of smoothing. Okay. Now we're going to switch to, let me go ahead and come in here. We're going to switch to add and drop it down to about 8 or 9 and come down each of these ways just to give it a bit of a peak, something to catch the brush on when they dry brush. We've already got the grooves to catch a wash. Okay, and then come that up like that. Whoop. Bring that down. Bring this down. And here. And what we're going to end up with is a very basic long-haired hairstyle. Okay, frame out. Now let's make all the subtools visible just to get a little brief glimpse. And here we have the basics before we get into adding in the wrinkles in the tunic or the detailing on the bracers. Okay. So what y'all think so far? Does this look like it'd be easy to paint? Okay, what we're going to do next, actually we're going to start off, let me go ahead and make that base and shield invisible. We also have to detail the hands, because even as much as this is supposed to be a beginner's paint, we don't want to make a less than quality figure. And then a little bit in the back of the ankle to show that it's worn down a little. Add, shrink that down, and then we're just going to kind of okay. Then we're going to do the same thing up here. We're going to kind of just add in some peaks to these wrinkles. And one right down the middle and right at the base here. And this. Okay. That's the boots frame out. Now we're going to need to add in some wrinkles on the down here. We're going to do that with starting with the clay buildup at a kind of a large size, because this is a kind of heavy fabric. We're going to say it's kind of like trigger cloth, which is a super heavy linen. Alright, what we're going to do is we're going to hide the trim and that. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of just start practicing where the whoop. And then come back here. It's going to come like that, come down extreme, come down and stop. And now we're going to bring that smooth up a lot, and we're going to just kind of just go over it a couple times just to, that's just for form. We're going to come back in with the slash tool to actually make it viable shapes. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put the armor back on. No, not that, the armor. Oh, the armor. There we go. And from him, we're going to slash. And once again, we're going to make it bigger. And we're going to make it subtract because we're going to go underneath each of these first. Let's turn on transparency because we're going to kind of need it. And from here down to there. And then we're going to add, make it a little bit bigger. We're going to come underneath there. And let's come down here. Once again, we're just trying to make some wrinkles because we want to emphasize that this is cloth. Okay. That's that. Now we're going to start detailing those bracers. And partly to do that, we're going to hide everything but the bracers. Just to make it just that much easier to get to. Frame. Okay, now we're going to seam 16. This, if you're not familiar with it, is a brush that, before we do this, I'm going to give it another subdivision, delete lower, 256 Dynamesh, and subdivide it until it's nice and smooth, because otherwise these whole caps would be a single polygon wide. Now, I need to, wrong direction. First we're adding in basically the trim. Then let's go ahead and give it some further trim. Oh. Excellent. And then, wrong way. There we go. And that gives us nice panel. It'll get some detail into the backs of those bracers now. To be exact, what we're going to do is we're going to use the slash tool. That's the Orb Cracks 2 tool. Shrink it down. Let's leave Lazy Mouse on, but increase the intensity a bit. And we're going to put on just a very large room. Let's make that. If we're going to use Lazy Mouse, it needs to have a decent radius so we can make it straight. Alright, that's fuel. And we're going to add in a different rune. A totally different rune to the back of this one. Let's make it Odal. So we go from down here, we're going to go up to 2/3 over, up to halfway over, back down, and then down and over. Frame out. Now, under subtool, let's turn everything back on. Well, everything except that. That we can turn off. That we can actually delete now. Next thing will be the shield and sword. Actually, no. The next thing will be the hands around the shield and sword. And actually, while I'm thinking about it, let's go back to seam 16. Let's make it bigger. And we're going to come up here. And from move, just so we can kind of pull that out a little bit. That's so that we have a seam. Okay. And now we're going to make the shield and sword visible, frame out. Alright. So I mentioned we're going to do some detailing on that sword, and we're going to. And that sword, we're first going to go ahead and subdivide it a bit. Then we're going to dynamesh it at 512. Okay, now we're going to go to inflate. We're going to add some pyramids by turning this into drag dot, and we're going to select an alpha. Alright, and the alpha we're going to select is actually in here. Or is it in... Yeah, here it is. Pyramid brush alpha. Open. Now, we're going to zoom in onto the hilt. We're going to shrink it down and turn the focal shift to 100. And no. Bring it up to 100% and turn off. Okay, good, laser. Okay, that's not good. Okay, so we need to shrink this. And by placing them, we want to kind of place them diamond-like. There we go. And let's kind of turn it at an angle. And the tricky part is trying to get it to where it's... Oh, this is difficult. Okay. There we go. Just something to give it some interesting detailing. And then we're going to go ahead and use this alpha. Alright, now we need to shrink that because it's way too big for what we're doing on this. No. We need something flatter. We need alpha 6. Yeah. And there. Frame out. And there is our warrior with his sword. Now, the last thing to detail is going to be the shield. And what we're going to do with the shield, we're going to first subdivide it a few times until it's about there. Delete. And then, once again, dynamesh it to 512. And now, subdivide it again, because we need a really high, and we're going to layer. Drag dot, intensity about there. We're going to add rivets to the inside and to the outside rim. Now, the smallest point we're going to need is about here, which we can actually make larger because the alpha doesn't fill the whole space. There we go. And here. Make sure that we're not going through. Okay. Now we're going to add in a couple more rivets on each side. 1, 2, make it 3 rivets on each side. Okay, frame out. And we're going to leave the shield flat so that you can paint whatever you want on it. Now, the next thing is, let's make that base visible. Zoom out a little bit. Now that base we're gonna mesh smooth a little bit. I'm gonna subdivide it once, just so it's got a bit more curve to it, and then going all the way back up top side, and we're going to merge down. Okay, always okay, and we're gonna start merging the whole thing together. And there we go. Now, this is technically the final figure. However, this figure, as it is, would have a tough time being printed. Not least of which because it's 8.4 million polygons. Yay, chainmail. But also because it's multiple intersecting pieces. So what we need to do now is we click the Dynamesh button. But just in case, I'm going to make it Dynamesh of 1024. We want a higher number because the detail in that chainmail might require it. Click Dynamesh. Okay, that took us down right there to 2.655. And it's a finished figure. But it's still 2.655 million polygons. And most, do you mind? And most slicers can't deal with that. So we're going to drag back up to Decimation Master, and we're going to make this sucker 100,000 triangles by making it 50,000 points. Custom. Now it will analyze the mesh. Oh, crazy cat. Insane fuzzbot. Yes, I love you, little buddy, but I'm trying to get my work done. As you snuffle and snuzzle in the air. And let's get you down. Go on. Good boy. And we should have right at 100,000 polygons as soon as it finishes this. Yep, 100,111 triangles. That is super easy for most slicers to slice. And I just realized I made two huge mistakes. We got to go back to the 8 million polygons. No. Because what I forgot to do, I forgot to tweak the face, including using inflation to close that mouth by increasing the size of the lower lip. Oh, no. Let's dots, alpha off, and focus shift to 0. Whoop, way too strong. Let's bring that down. Okay, good. Now. Now we're also going to go ahead and kind of deepen those laugh lines a little and add in a little bit of further detailing on the face just to make it more clear. So we go back to our slash brush. Going to subtract, shrink the mouse, and then now we're going to go back to inflate real quick. We're going to kind of inflate above. Make it a little bit larger. We're going to kind of inflate under the cheek, under the eye. Once again, to try and emphasize these facial features. And kind of emphasize the jawline a little bit. Okay. Then we're going to go back into slash, and we're going to emphasize around the eye. Frame out. And now we're going to Dynamesh at 1024. Dynamesh. Okay. And now, once again, we're back down to, well, now we're down to 1.611 because we closed off the mouth. That was a lot of polygons we lost. Let's go ahead and put it at 50. 50,000 points, 100,000 triangles. And reordering, and 100,077 triangles. Now, let's export, and we're going to go to Free Sculpt Minis, Broadcast Miniatures, New, Painting Practice, Painting Practice, Figure, Save. Okay. Oh! Don't tell me. Yeah. I forgot to put the base in. The base was... Oh. Append. Import base. Made a couple boo-boos tonight. Geometry. Divide, divide. Lower. Merge down. Okay, there we go. Geometry. Dynamesh. Oh. 1024. Dynamesh. Okay, now it's 2.692 thanks to the presence of the base. We click our custom 50K. Yes, everyone makes mistakes. And we still have half an hour left before the end of a typical show. Can someone strangle me? Can someone please strangle me? I just realized I forgot one other thing. And we're going to hit Control Z, go back 2 levels again. Back to the 8 million. Because I forgot to do the hand details. One of the most important set of details you can do. So, go back to inflate. And what we got to do is we got to inflate the inside of the thumb. Let's make sure we don't have... Okay, the no lacing off. Now, on the average, 10 is what we'd need for the size. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're going to draw it back to here. Right. And then we're going to smooth that out in 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to... Okay. That's all we really need to do for the hands. Whoop. No. These hands. Now we're gonna... And let's make this... Make sure this thumb closes up in here. Because we need that to be solid. Okay, frame out. Subtool. Append. Import the base. Okay, 2.691. Let's go ahead and custom. Alright. And we have 100,096 polygons. Triangles to be exact. And we have our figure. Now, that's everything. No mistakes, nothing forgotten, everything gone. Now, we left the front of the shield blank as further practice for freehand painting. We have flat metal in the form of the waist plate and the bracers, as well as the sword blade. The crossguard and pommel could be painted as a different kind of metal. We have the metal rim of the shield. The inside of the shield could be painted as wood or as metal or as paint. We have cloth on the robe on the bottom. We have leather on the bag and on the boots. We have skin on the hands, wrists, this elbow, and the face. And then we have hair right here. And then finally we have wood with built-in grain on the floor with a couple nails for detailing. So we have pretty much covered pretty much all of the most common texture types in this kind of stocky little warrior here. So let's go ahead and re-export it now that we've fixed all the problems. Painting practice figure. Save. Yes, we want to replace it. Okay. The hardest part to paint on this figure, probably this part of the pouch. Otherwise, everything is pretty easy to reach. Everything is pretty much your basic color. There's a few areas of this right underarm that would be a little bit difficult to get to, but that's about it. Everything else is pretty simple and pretty easy to paint. Now, what we're going to do is coming in here, we're going to import it. Import. And we're going to do one thing. We're going to make sure that it's got no holes. There were 84 polygons that were added by capping holes. Now when we click for open lines, no open edges. It is a single solid watertight manifold surface. I'm going to go ahead and just pull him up so that his base is at floor level for the sake of rendering the promo when it comes around. And file, export selected, painting practice figure. Yes, I want to replace it. I do not need to print texture coordinates. I don't need to print any of these. Precision is 12 digits, which is good. Export. Done. Okay, and that brings us to here. Yay! So, that is what I think would be the ideal practice painting figure. You print out a boatload of them and use them to practice your cloth, your chainmail, your metal, your hair, your faces, your hands, your leather, your wood. Practice painting freehand on the face of the shield. Make up little diddly bits to paint on those shields. That should cover almost all of the bases for painting practice. And then we get a kitty. And let's see what y'all are saying in the peanut gallery, huh? Anything since Largash asked the question at 9:30? Nope, doesn't look like it. Yeah. He's your baby boy. This is what happens when your cats really, really love you and really, really trust you. Okay, so if you are just learning, no, Fuzz, what? Ah! I'm trying to get you off my shoulder so I can put you on the floor. There you go. Get on down. If you're a beginning painter, I would recommend looking through some of the more basic manuals that are out there. There's one by Army Painter. There's a couple, several dozen by Citadel since they began. Don't worry about any of the more complex techniques. Just learn your basic, thinning your paint. So yes, multiple coats are needed, but the end result looks so much better no matter what anyone else tells you. Try it first. Then try not thinning it. There are a very rare few paints that don't need thinning. And I'm back all the way over there. Most of those paints are from the Viejo Model Air set. Do I have one within reach? And from the Viejo Mecha Color sets. These tend to be a lot thinner, but they also tend to be a lot shinier. So they're not quite as good a choice for your base color. Anyway, the next thing is, that goes up here. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It goes down here. Dry brushing and washes. With those two techniques, you can make an outstanding looking tabletop level figure. And when you're using them, just remember, doing the dry brush for highlight and then a wash, you get a slightly darker but cleaner and smoother looking result. If you wash then dry brush, it'll be a little bit lighter and be a little bit dustier looking, a little bit not quite as clean and drier. Once you got that, just go to town. And once you have decided that you know what you're doing with a wash and with dry brush, then go ahead and start watching those videos for some of the more advanced techniques like wet blending, like straight up layering, where you've got a very, you've got a color, and it's on a curve like this. You got a very, very thin down brighter color, and you go from paint here, let it dry, 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 paint here, let it dry. So it builds up to that peak shade. And I just put you down on the floor, you little cuddle slut. Do you mind? So, of the 5 people watching now, does anyone have anything to say or ask or comment? Anything? Alright. If there's no questions in the next few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and end early. Yeah. UV layout is kind of cheat mode for UV mapping. It's ridiculously good, but it also does cost money. I have it because I use it for my work. But most programs out there, Blender has what's called, the term is pelt unwrapping. That's what I do to make those the male pieces. Is I take the low res geometry and I unwrap by pelt unwrapping. It got its name because it's kind of like how when you skin an animal, when you unroll the pelt and flatten the pelt. You make cuts, you unwrap, you unfold, and flatten it out. But almost any program has something in it. For example, Blender has one, 3D Studio Max. Yeah. ZBrush has one, but it's unreliable. By that I mean you don't have control over where the cuts are placed. And if I did that to the Hauberg, it would be an curled up, totally flat, but weird shaped mess that trying to paint the chainmail on would be a nightmare. Yeah, it's great if you're going to use it to transfer maps from one place to another. It's horrible for being able to paint your own maps. Meanwhile, tonight's snack is brought to you by Chipotle Cheddar and Habanero Jack. I have 2 of the cheddar and 3 of the jack left. After the past 3 episodes, plus this, does anyone else have any questions on painting or on sculpting with an eye towards painting? Half decent kick. Then again, it does have actual habanero in it. Well, there's at least 4 other people watching. There's you, there's Largash, there's Josh, there's me, and 1 person who hasn't spoken up yet. And 1 person who hasn't spoken up yet. See, I am so glad the days of everything being fake cheese is over. Ingredients: culturized for the chipotle peppers, the chipotle cheese. Culturized pasteurized milk, chipotle peppers, salt, cheese enzymes, annatto. And this is Kroger brand. And on the other side, the habanero jack. Milk, jalapeno peppers, habanero peppers, salt, cheese enzymes. Aha, it's Christopher. Yes. So like I said, that is how, you just saw how I sculpt. I take my base figure, I load in props and clothing items, base clothing items, pose it, export, and sculpt. See, I love real cheese. I don't care if it's cheap, mass-produced cheese, or if it's an expensive Edam. A good, a nice, basic cheesy cheese is all I need. Do you know why it comes as second nature? Practice. It's been almost a year since my first episode. And I've been using ZBrush for well over a decade, if not a decade and a half, before then. And this... get in the trash can, you. Yeah. Yes, I did, Mark. Every base mesh I use, I made. Oh my... That includes even the older meshes, like the hunting drake and my wyvern, are 3D printable versions of models that I made for my other job that I still have copyright on. The boar in the orc set, and the wolves in the potential goblin expansion. My geometry, my work, my rigging. So yeah. Yeah, see, the problem is with Daz, a lot of the stuff that comes with it, and you can purchase for it, you won't have the rights to 3D print. And in the case of what I do, I would definitely not have the right to incorporate it into something that I distribute for free or pay. So I make certain that everything I make, I have the rights to use by only making my own stuff. Those people who are patrons of mine, who have the master level, have the rights to use the figure parts that I included in that set. And as long as it is no longer able to be, the geometry can't be pulled out, for example, decimation or in ZBrush, Dynamesh, then they can just redistribute the results. Now, if you look at the figure I sculpted, and you redistribute that, if it's one on Thingiverse, fine. Remix it. As long as you remix it, fine. But, for example, the Dragonborn that I did for Danny Carrera, or any of the figures I did for my giant set, no, that's not cool. Well, it is now 9:56. I'm going to get some soda. And I am getting ready to say goodnight. So, I am going to hold my hand up here. Well, bring it to it's in the camera. And I am going to count from 5 to 1. And when I get to 1, I'm going to go after saying something rather pithy and simplistic. You are welcome, David. And then once I see on the screen it go, I'll know that I've caught up to lag and I'll be closing down the stream. So, I'm going to go ahead and say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Megatron has fallen, and now I, Starscream, lead the Decepticons.